Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My guest today is Allison G.S. Knox, an instructor at the Emergency Management and Fire Science Department at American Military University. Allison, welcome. It's good to talk to you here today.
It's great to talk with you too.
Why don't we start by you giving us some sense of how you got involved in this?
Sure. Well, I was a 16-year-old lifeguard. Did that to join a competitive swimming team. I needed some money to really swim, and absolutely loved everything about rescues, loved everything about emergencies, and was actually really shocked to learn that they were cutting the budget in my hometown and could not understand it because I was just so impressed with everything that people in public safety do.
So let me just ask really quickly, can you remember one of the toughest things you had to do as a lifeguard talking about emergencies?
I think it was probably the matter of training, staying up to date with everything, staying in shape to take care of any rescues that were coming up. But I loved every minute of it.
And that got you started on this path?
Absolutely. But it was more the policy issues that I just couldn't understand why certain public policies were happening for emergencies, and it really just kind of set me on that path.
So what did you decide? Was there a moment where you decided, okay, I'm going to fix this one way or the other, or was it some other experience?
No, I think it was probably when I was in college. I had a fantastic job in a level 1 trauma center emergency department in Hartford, Connecticut, actually a really busy urban setting. And I think it was one of those moments where I said, I would really love to learn more about public policy, more about political science to try to help make this better. Mm-hmm. And there were all sorts of policy issues that, I was seeing. And I really wanted to try to help.
What were some of those policy issues that concerned you?
A lot of the wages that EMTs make was very concerning to me. I know that a lot of people are really trying to make ends meet, and they're still doing that to this day. A lot of EMTs work multiple jobs, and I really wanted to try to help fix that so they didn't have to work so hard and and work so many different jobs. Although that in itself, now that I know a lot about political science, now that I know a lot about emergency management, that is a huge issue that will probably still take decades to fix. Hopefully not that long, but It is complicated.
I imagine so. We'll get into some of your expertise in a little bit, but first I suppose the next logical thing is to talk about how you went from being this impressed 16-year-old to then the college scenario where public policy was your main interest, and then to getting trained to do what it was you wanted to do. Talk to us a little bit, if you would, about the training platforms that are necessary that were necessary to achieve what it was that you did.
Absolutely. Well, for what I enjoy, and that's particularly the policies surrounding emergency management and emergency medical services, I studied political science as an undergrad. I also have my EMT. I am a certified emergency medical technician, but I also worked on my master's degrees. I actually have 4 in emergency management.
No way.
I do. I have 4.
4 masters?
Yes, actually almost 5.
Okay, so now that you've thrown this Molotov cocktail into the theater, you have to explain where you found the time to do all this. What were the 4? What are the 4?
Emergency management, national security studies, history, and international relations.
How'd you find time to do all that?
I'm not really sure. No, I'm pretty good at time management, and it was also something that I had a goal in mind. I wanted to really understand the political structure of everything, and then just kind of worked at it, chipped away at it.
So I guess time management is really important when you start talking about responding to emergencies.
Absolutely. It's probably one of the most important pieces of that.
Okay, so I interrupted you. You were telling me about the platforms.
Oh, yes. So I have my master's degrees, and I am working on my doctorate slowly but surely. And I did those things with my education, but I also worked for a member of Congress for a little while, and I also worked in the emergency department. And from there, I worked on joining committees with different national organizations. I am the advocacy coordinator for Virginia with the National Association of EMTs. I am also on their advocacy committee, and I also am involved in the International Public Safety Association. I'm the chair of their Tactical Emergency Medical Support Committee, and I'm also on the Rescue Task Force Committee. And those positions have been wonderful because I've learned so many different pieces about policy from different perspectives, and it's really given me a lot of insight. For the American Military University, I teach in the Emergency Management and Fire Science departments, and I also write for the EDM Digest.
That's where I want to go. Fire science. When I think of fire science, I think, wow, how cool is that? But what is that?
That's a really good question. Fire science is actually pretty complicated. It's just on a very simple explanation. It's how do you go about fighting a fire? What are the different pieces for fighting a fire? And fires can be pretty complicated based on what they're constructed of. So fire science looks at how are you going to fight that fire. There's also the pieces of how do you stop that fire before it even starts, and that's the mitigation piece that we talk a lot about in emergency management, but we also talk about it in fire science too.
Well, how much do we know enough about fire science in the general population of the nation? Do we know enough about that?
You know, that's
do we need to know more?
Absolutely. There's honestly a long-standing debate in emergency management and in public safety associations throughout the country. How do we better educate the public on how to prevent these different fires? Most of them are things that we can prevent. Most of these things are things that we can easily educate the public about, but it's also one of those things that is very tricky for the public to understand.
And it's more than just, I guess, dating myself a bit, but I don't really care. I'm old. When I was a kid, there was this Smokey the Bear thing. You saw it everywhere. There were commercials, there were billboards, there were things that they would distribute to kids about please don't start fires, what not to do. So what you're saying is we need more sophisticated stuff than that these days, I think.
Absolutely. And I think that agencies throughout the country, and when I say that, I mean at the local level, at the state level, I think a lot of people are working to figure out how we can better educate the public. Smokey the Bear was a great public relations piece that really helped kids to understand.
Okay, my guest today is Allison G.S. Knox, an instructor in the Emergency Management and Fire Science departments at the American Military University. I'm your moderator, J.J. Green, on Academic Insights, Emergency Management, sponsored by American Military University on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network.